Moscow is allegedly ready to ensure there are no strikes on Ukrainian territory on election day if Kyiv decides to hold elections. This was stated by Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Galuzin. According to him, Russia is also ready to discuss with the US and European countries the introduction of external administration in Ukraine under the auspices of the UN to organize elections. Earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in an interview with The Atlantic that Russia is initiating elections during the war in order to get rid of him.
They decided that this is the easiest and fastest way to get rid of me? That's why I believe that the idea of holding elections during the war is above all a Russian position.
At the Munich Security Conference, Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Ukraine is ready to stop strikes on Russian territory if elections are organized in Russia itself. The remark about elections in Russia was met with a storm of applause in the hall.
We can also implement a ceasefire for the Russians if they hold elections in Russia.
As the head of state noted, if the American side insists on the issue of elections, he is ready to demonstrate that Ukraine is prepared for this.
I am very honest. Give us a 2-month ceasefire, and we will hold elections. Give us a ceasefire, infrastructure, and security. Maybe not 2 months, but we need many days to prepare.
Zelensky noted that the issue of holding elections during wartime is a complicated one. Moreover, he does not know if anyone has ever had such experience in holding elections. According to Western media, during negotiations in Abu Dhabi on February 4th through 5th, the US set conditions for Ukraine to hold elections, May 15th. This is explained by the fact that after this date, things will pick up speed in the US. The election campaign for the midterm congressional elections?
Could it really be that the outcome of the bloodiest war of the 21st century depends on just one phone call? Matthew Whitaker, an influential figure in the American political establishment, made a statement that sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. According to him, Donald Trump possesses exactly the leverage that would force Putin to immediately halt the offensive. What exactly does the President of the United States need to say for the Kremlin to back down? Is this a real plan or just an election illusion? And how is this phone call peace viewed in Kyiv? Right now, we will break down exclusive details from Glavred's report. Watch until the end. This scenario might turn out to be a bit unexpected. And for more details, check out our report. You're on the Glavred channel. I'm your host, Yevgeny Serov. Like and subscribe to the channel. Whitaker explains, one call is not a request, it's an ultimatum. According to Glavred's report, Washington's strategy in 2026 is based on the principle of the stick. And once again, the stick. Trump. May offer Putin a choice that is impossible to refuse without catastrophic consequences for Russia. The first argument, economic strangulation. The United States is hinting at the introduction of a total embargo. Any operations involving Russian energy resources would be subject to secondary sanctions, which would even affect China and India. The second argument, the arms gateway. If Putin refuses to negotiate, Washington threatens to supply Ukraine with such volumes of long-range weapons and aircraft that it would make it impossible for Russian troops to remain in the occupied territories. Whitaker is convinced that Putin only understands the language of force, and Trump is the only one who is ready to use this language to its fullest extent. In this scenario, the key role on the Ukrainian side is played by the head of the presidential office, Kirilo Budanov. According to the editor-in-chief, he is the very person who verifies information for the White House. He conveys to the American partners the real cost of a freeze and insists on it. A call from Trump will only work if Ukraine remains strong on the battlefield. Budanov is actively promoting the idea that Trump's diplomacy should be based on Ukrainian resilience. The head of the presidential office emphasizes, without clear security guarantees, for Kyiv, any call to Moscow will only be a temporary pause. Budanov and his team are working to ensure that the terms of this one call include not only a ceasefire, but also an irreversible path for Ukraine to join NATO. For him, peace is not the absence of gunfire, but the absence of any possibility for the enemy to fire again. Why would Putin, who has ignored all calls for peace for 2 years, listen to Trump this year? The answer lies in exhaustion. The editor-in-chief's article points to the critical state of the Russian economy and its mobilization resources. Putin needs a way out that he can present to his people as a variado, a victory while saving face at the same time. Trump, on the other hand, could offer him a golden bridge for retreat, for example, partial lifting of sanctions in exchange for withdrawing troops to the lines. February 24th, Whitaker believes that the Kremlin is waiting for exactly this kind of signal from Washington to end a war they can no longer win, but are afraid to lose publicly. It's a game on the edge of a foul, where the price of a mistake is global.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called on the Donald Trump administration to increase pressure on Russia to end the war. In an interview with Politico at the Munich Security Conference, he emphasized that it is the United States that has the political and financial power to stop the aggression and suggested that Congress may need to strengthen post-war security guarantees. Zelensky also criticized the United States for trying to force Ukrainians to give up territory in Donbass without demanding any sacrifices from the Kremlin.
There are some signals from the American side, from President Trump. They say, it's time for compromises. You can take some steps forward. We have already made many compromises. Putin and his associates are not in prison. That is the biggest compromise the world has already made. We agreed to a ceasefire. Putin refused.
The Ukrainian leader denied that Trump had demanded a peace settlement by the summer. According to him, the Kremlin is dragging out negotiations with the US, seeking normalization of relations and the easing of sanctions, while Putin's goal is the occupation of eastern Ukraine. As The Guardian reports, the Ukrainian leader said that US President Donald Trump is interested in quickly reaching a comprehensive peace agreement, as he prefers large-scale solutions. At the same time, Zelensky emphasized that for Kyiv, the sequence is fundamental: first security guarantees and key conditions, then agreements. Earlier, US President Donald Trump stated that Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky should move forward and reach an agreement to end the war.
Russia is looking to reach a formal agreement, and Zelensky will need to make a strategic move. Otherwise, he will miss out on a truly significant opportunity. He simply must take action now.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that Washington will continue to seek an end to the war in Ukraine. At the same time, he noted that Russia, despite its losses, is still capable of achieving its original objectives, and in his opinion, Vladimir Putin's plans have been reduced to capturing the remaining 20% of Donetsk region that his troops have not yet occupied. It has become known that on February 14th, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will hold a meeting with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. In addition, a new round of negotiations involving Ukraine, the US, and Russia is scheduled to take place in Geneva on February 17th through 18th.